Good evening. This is Manny Gathers, and I want to uh, thank you for taking the time to listen to this webinar to kind of understand what we do at Best Money Strategies. And our primary goal really is to truly be financial educators. And what I mean is we try to teach individuals and business owners and families how to truly look at an investment for what it really does. And in order to do that, you have to apply some math. And it's not complicated math, it's simple math, but you need to be able to apply simple math, not just at the surface, but at a truly deeper layer, a deeper level, so that you really understand what your investment vehicle or strategy is going to produce or should produce for you in the future. So, this particular quote I love. It says, I heard someone say, men lie, women lie, but numbers don't lie. And the author's unknown. I can't recall who said it, but to me that makes perfect sense. When it particularly involves finances and money, because just think about it, we're up against a lot of different things throughout the day in our life that really shapes your mind to think one way. For example, when you're at home and you're watching TV, you constantly see, advertisements and marketing on your TV screen, and it's almost essentially the same thing. You have maybe 5, 7 companies who dominate the advertisement space, and they tell you almost the exact same thing, just a little bit differently. And they'll tell you, hey, invest in your 401k in our fund A, or fund B, or fund C. And they try to, tell you it's low cost fee, no upfront fee, whatever it may be. And they constantly beat you up with these commercials. So eventually you start thinking, wow, I see this particular company on TV a lot, and they have a lot of commercials no matter what channel I'm watching, so they must be really good because they're everywhere. And technically they're not that they're really good, it's just that they spend a lot of money on advertisement. And then you go and go to work or to your business, and you hear the same kind of commercial. Oh, that's the same company. Or these top 5 companies are always on commercials, radio, TV, or whatever it may be, online. So they must be the best. And then you get your place to work or business, and then you get offered the same pieces of paper from your HR, and they tell you, oh, by the way, here you go. This is where you sign up for your retirement plan, and these are the type of funds you get to choose from, and here's where you tell us how much you want to contribute each month. So your only real choices are how much you're going to put in each month and which type of fund you're going to, invest in, which is super aggressive, growth, or ultra conservative. But you never have any choice of which company. Someone else is doing that for you. The fees and all that stuff, they've already done that for you, and you just a contributor. You just put in the money in, but you really don't have true choices. And then they really get you in when they give you the nice prospectus with all the pretty colors and pages, and they say, hey, but look how we performed over the 1 year, 5 year, 10 year, and life of this fund. And you start seeing these numbers, and you say, wow, this on average, even the life of this fund, it's about 5%, 7%. In the shorter times, it may be 10, 11%. So it looks great because those numbers, they're based on real data, but they don't tell you what's beneath the other set of numbers, what I call the real numbers of what that investment is doing for you now and in the future. And that's what we try to do, is really break this down and say, look, cut all the BS out. Let's truly show people how to numerically evaluate an investment vehicle based on math and a lot less emotions. Because again, logically, your brain is telling you, you've seen the commercial on TV at home, you heard it on the radio in your car, and boom, at work, they're telling you this is what everybody's doing. So logically, you just convince yourself this must be the best and are the only option. And I'm saying, pause your brain for a minute and let's dig down into the real numbers that count the most. It's not what it does initially for you or as it's growing per se. It really is, you have to get the whole start to finish numbers, which is, okay, what is it going to cost me up front? How do we expect it to perform throughout its lifetime? But the most important thing is, what is it going to cost me at the end when I withdraw? Those are the numbers that matter the most. And what most people don't realize is, what I'm saying is like this. If you talk to someone that has $300,000 in their, say, 401k plan, and then they go retire, and then they're 65 and they say, I'm going to start withdrawing money from it. Well, you're 65. A lot of folks are living to 90 years old easily right now. So that's 25 plus years, 30 years or more that you plan on being around. So when you left your employment and you realize mathematically, oh, now I'm applying the real math. 300,000 is not enough. What happens when I get sick? What happens if I get hurt and I have to pay for this unexpected medical expense? That 300,000 doesn't look as much, doesn't look so good after all. And that's the math I'm trying to teach clients to look at up front, rather than wait till you're in your golden years and now you're trying to budget. And you know the story. You got old people all over the United States doing the same thing. They get this rude awakening because the numbers don't lie, and then they're forced to budget every dime down to the penny because the numbers just don't add up. The healthcare cost is going up. Medicine goes up. The expenses to keep their house and lights and bills paid still goes up. But the money they set aside for retirement is steadily going down because, oh, now that you're withdrawing it, your math, no one ever showed you mathematically how that is going to be affecting you as you withdraw. Because, oh, I need 20,000 a month withdrawn from my account in order to survive, or I need 5,000 instead of 2,000. So now my jackpot or my nest egg is not going to last me for another 25 plus years. And then you see these older folks, which are your real life examples, they're going out getting what? Part-time jobs or full-time jobs. And then they're getting another big surprise when they get these jobs, because now the jobs, great, there's more money coming in, but all the time is being lost to the job now. So instead of being home, sleeping on the couch or on the front porch, they out there slaving on the job, after 60-some years of age, night shift and all these different shifts, and frustrated. All these restaurants, you see them at night, late at night, you see old people on the grills or being your waiters and waitresses. They're grouchy. You wonder why. Because they'd rather be home. But the math didn't add up for them. It didn't come out right when they need it the most, when you withdraw the money. So we try to take that approach and literally flip this investment thinking upside down and say, hey guys, you really need to understand the math behind your investing now before you start, so you know that you're in the right type of vehicle, vice being surprised at the end when you need the most. And I always challenge people. I say, go talk to 5, 10 elderly people who are 65 and older and ask them, how is their retirement working out for them? Meaning, are they using the 401k? How does that look? How does that affect them? Are they getting Social Security? How much? How does that work? How's the healthcare plan working with the Medicare, Medicaid? Ask them, and they'll tell you what they had to do to adjust for the big surprise, because no one told them 40 years before, that the math looked good, what they showed you on the prospectus, but it doesn't work for you when you truly need it the most when you retire 40 years later. So we want to, debunk that whole investment strategy and really get people to look at investing in their vehicles using real math, true math, not that hidden stuff that they show you on the commercials and on the prospectuses. So we're going to take 20, 30 minutes to kind of go through this, and it's done in 3 phases. The first one is 5, 7 minutes or so of trying to understand the historical perspective, and then we kind of go in the middle and dive into how a lot of things work numerically as far as your investment account or investment vehicle. And then we go to the end and try to do like basic simple case study to show you how it could possibly look. And then you could take that case study and kind of really shape your family or your business's outcome, because the math at that point, you can apply it now and help shape that future. So let's go to the next page here. And let's kind of see what history has said. First question is, what was the highest tax rate in the U.S. history? And obviously, I'm 45, and a lot of folks are younger or whatever. They're not born, back in the 40s or whatever, and so they wouldn't probably know this unless they truly studied history. But the highest tax rate was 94%. So think about that. The federal government put a 94% tax rate on anybody making over $200,000 a year. And now in today's dollar, that's over $2 million. So back then, that was 1944, 1945 to be exact. Back then, that was a lot of, you were you were rich at 200,000, but the government also taxed you 94% of your money. So that didn't leave a lot left over. But there was a reason behind that. And a lot of folks, again, if you study history, in 44 and 45, that was World War II. So because of that war, the United States government jacked the tax rate up in order to bring in the revenue to pay for the war, the cost of war. Because the United States didn't have the capital just sitting around to fund a major war like that. So they had to do it in a robust manner. So everyone's tax rate went up, and the highest was 94%. So you understand that sequence of events. Now, as we move forward through history, in the 70s, a major change happened. The tax rate, highest rate was at that point about 70%. So obviously it went down from 94 to 70%. And then in 2012, it did another dramatic thing. It got cut in half. It was down to 35%. So that was great. And you figure it would keep going down. But then something significant happened in 2013. It changed from 35% to 39.6%. So in 70 plus years, the tax rate went as high as 94% and all the way down to 35%. And then all of a sudden, 1 year apart, it started to go back up to 39.6. So 70 plus years going down, and it finally started to go back up. Not huge, but it did go back up, 2013. So keep that in mind, because you're going to need to understand that. And the last question is, because of this history, does anyone know what the tax rate will be in the future? Is it going to go back down, or is it going to continue going back up, which is the reverse trend? Well, just think about that. So let's show you a little bit as far as how the U.S. look from a debt perspective. So as you can see in the bottom, 1928 up to 1949, this is just billions of dollars. So in 1944, the U.S. federal debt was right over a little over $200 billion. Back then, that was a lot of money, $200 billion. And again, they needed to raise that So it got as high as 258 billion because again, the war was going on, so they spent more on war. But think about this. Back in the 20s, 30s, and 40s, the national debt was only in the billions. And as we proceed through time, we see for the first time in the U.S. history, in 1982, the U.S. debt finally hit $1 trillion. And as you look at this from 82 on up to 99, it just kept going up. It went from 1 trillion up to 5 trillion in 99. And as we go a little bit further in history, it kept going up. It wasn't coming down. And this is key, guys. You got to understand, if 70 plus years of history has shown you one thing, it should show you this. It doesn't matter who is in office, Democrat, Republican, Independent. They all fall victim to the same thing. They constantly have to spend more money in order to keep pace with things that they can't control or they refuse to face and control. And because of that, there is no way the debt is going to go down unless they do some major changes. So that's where you have the parties fighting over who's going to do the changes or the right type of changes. But don't get me wrong, it doesn't matter what the changes are. They're going to upset some groups and make some groups happy. All they're doing is playing the shell game. They're going to satisfy this side of economy because they're making changes on these programs that these folks like, and vice versa on the other side. So it really doesn't matter which party. It just, they're going to play the proverbial shell game, and like I said, piss off people in one party over another. So obviously today, 2017, the debt is right around 19 trillion, almost $20 trillion. But there's also a key factor, and that's this right here. This next chart shows you the GDP, debt to GDP percent ratio. And folks don't understand what this really means. So let me break it down for you. Go back to the left side of the screen and you see the 1940s, 45. Right in that area, where was this graph at? Where did it top out at? Over 120%. That means for the amount of money we brought in, GDP, gross domestic product, how much money we brought in as a country, we spent 20% more beyond that. So we were running a negative budget by over 20%. Promises in the future to pay it. So as you can see, that graph exceeded not just 100%, 120% in the 40s during the war. But then as you look through time, it went, after the war was over, it took a big dip and kept going down. And right around when we said 82 is when it started to go, we hit the first trillion. Well, that's what happened. So 44 was World War II. 82, the first time we hit a trillion. And then as you can see in the 80s, it just kept going up nice and steady. And then the 90s kind of leveled off and kind of went back down. And then it shot up again in 08, 09. And you know what was going on during that time? 2008, 2009, 10, bailout, war on terror expanded. Then September 11, 9/11. And guess what happened? It just kept going up. But look at that key point there on the very far right. It is now, for the second time in this 70 plus years window, above 100%. Now that is important. A lot of folks don't understand what this means, but this is why you have to understand the math. So let's go. Just keep that picture in mind. It did it once in the 40s, 120%, and now it's up there again. Right now we're about 105, 107% of debt to GDP ratio. Okay, 70 years to get back to that point. So what are some of the factors we're facing? Um, Obviously, the U.S. government collects taxes at the federal level, and again, this is not even talking about the state. This is just the federal. And 76 cents of every dollar is spent on four things, four programs. And a lot of folks need to understand what these four programs are. And you'll see why they're such a hot topic in every election cycle. But you spend 76 cents of every dollar on Social Security, Medicaid, Medicare, and the interest payments only on the national debt, not the principal, just the interest is 76 cents percent total. That leaves 24% for all the other government programs like defense, the military, like the EPA, FAA, infrastructure, fixing the roads, all these different wars we're doing now. We're doing these micro wars all over the world, war on terror. Then government pension, because we have a lot of government employees, and it's one of the few things still guaranteed the pension, right? So you got 24% of all the taxes coming in to pay for all this stuff. And there are a lot of programs that far outnumber the top four. So you keep that in mind. You only got 24 cents in every dollar going to pay for everything else in the government. But the top four are just killing that dollar each and every time it comes in. Now, out of those four programs, the top four, which one do you think is the most expensive? Out of Social Security, Medicaid, Medicare, and the national debt interest, which one? And most people guess it's Medicaid. It's 5 times the cost of second place runner-up, which is Social Security. And you kind of can see why these two programs complement each other so well. As you get older, obviously, you spend more money on your health because your body is wearing out, and you have to go to the doctor more. And one little sickness can set you back a lot longer because you just don't recover as fast. And then obviously, Social Security, because we got a lot of people that are older that are retiring and relying on Social Security heavily. So they're withdrawing it, they're taking it out. So those are key things to kind of keep in mind, the factors. So now the question becomes, why is it so high now? Why? Well, let's just again reflect back to 35 when Social Security was at a 42-to-1 ratio. And what does that mean? It means for every 42 people working, only one person was drawing Social Security. And keep in mind also back then, you had to be 65 before you can start drawing money out of Social Security. But guess what the funny and ironic part? I don't mean funny as I'm laughing at somebody. But guess what the funny part was? Life expectancy back in the 30s was only 62 years of age. So most folks never collected Social Security because most died before they hit 62. And then the few that did collect Social Security, they didn't live typically beyond 67 years of age. So that means they only collected 2 years worth of Social Security and then they died. So when you look at the creator of the Social Security program, it was absolutely perfect by design. I'm going to create a system where I got a lot of people putting in, very little taken out, but very little actually get to take it out because they don't live anyway. You can't beat a program like that. It's a great carrot stick that they used, and people bought into it, but they never really got the benefit from it. So now let's fast forward to today. Social Security ratio is only 3-to-1. So for every 3 people working, only one person's collecting. So that's a big change. And guess what else is happening today? You can withdraw Social Security at age 62, 3 years earlier. Then you have better health care. People are living way longer. So guess what? That new life expectancy is now 85 and up. So people are living much longer. So what does that mean? They're actually getting to spend almost 1/4 of their life collecting Social Security. No one planned for that. No one did the math for this scenario because it wasn't on their radar. Mathematically, their system was designed perfectly back in 35, but as we got better with medicine and healthcare, they didn't realize, wow, the math doesn't work for when we need the most in the future. So the Medicare, Medicaid, this is literally blowing the budget because, like I said, the folks now are living 25 years beyond or more beyond the collection starting point. And guess what happened during World War II that caused this phenomenon that you're seeing right now with Social Security and Medicaid and Medicare? After World War II, the soldiers set a record when they came back to the United States. And that record was what we call the baby boomer generation. They literally had more babies during that period of American history than ever before. And today we have over 75 million baby boomers. That's almost 1/4 of the whole United States population of about 325 million. So 1/4 of the United States is using Social Security or begin to use it. I mean, it's so fast. The numbers show that 10,000 baby boomers retire each day, 7 days a week. Over 10,000 per day are retiring and enrolling into the Social Security, Medicaid, Medicare program. So now you can see why that ratio went from 42 to 1 down to 3 to 1. The folks are living longer, and you have this big swath of people that wasn't accounted for in history, and the math wasn't baked in properly, and now they're all coming to the table at the same time to eat. And they're saying, oh, I need my Social Security because the cost of living is higher. We don't have as many jobs anymore. So I can't even go to work. And now I got some health issues, so I got to rely on this Medicaid, Medicare thing. That was a big flip in what was used to happen. So what you see as far as the economists, what they call is about to happen is the biggest wealth transfer in U.S. history. And that's because all these baby boomers are doing the same thing. They're, some of them are saving money, and some of them are doing things that no one expected. And mathematically, it's just upsetting the whole outcome right here. So now, what's really going on? This one is something, again, people don't think about it at the household level, but you should. Because, again, you have to look at the whole entire thing in order for it to make sense to you. The national debt is growing about $1 trillion per year. Sometimes $2 trillion a year, $3 trillion. But on average, $1 trillion per year. And the government is still spending, increasing the spending each and every year without a tax increase yet. So now if you add on all the things like the 10,000 baby boomers that retire each day that draw on Social Security and fall into the Medicare, Medicaid program, the system was, again, not designed to handle that. And then on top of that, those baby boomers, they're saving trillions of dollars in their retirement accounts, right? But only half of them, 50% of them, so about 37 million of them have $500,000 or more. The other half have less than $100,000. So you think about this. If 37 million people don't have $100,000 to their name in their retirement account, and they retire at 65, what do you think they're going to do? They're going to jump on the Social Security and Medicaid, Medicare program because their lives will depend on it. That's the reality. And they're saying, I put in, now I need to collect. Because they don't have anything put away that's going to last them for the next 25, 30 years that they're going to live, more likely. Because they know that's the reality. They got another 25 plus years to go. They just don't have the money. And then now they can't go work because they're too old. No one's going to hire them. So they have to rely on these programs. Now, you got to understand the taxes and the tax laws are just working against the average earner and saver. And that's just the way it is. And a lot of folks don't understand how the system is designed to keep you blinded by what's going on, but the laws are not working in your favor. And again, these programs are not designed to benefit you. It's designed to help the government bringing revenue to pay for all the bills. And the government decides which bills are more important than others. And trust me, that's why you see the politicians fighting all the time over the top four, because they rather spend that money on defense and creating businesses, boosting businesses like, the defense businesses that's going to help their bottom line, their pockets, and their stock picks, not the ones you want, that's going to help you. So again, just kind of keep it all in mind. This is something you have to understand in order to apply your math. And then I call this one "There's More," because this is really where it counts. This is where it starts to affect you. Most people invest in one type of retirement account, and that type of account is called a tax-deferred. And what do I mean by tax-deferred? That means you reduce your taxable income every time you contribute to it now, and you don't pay taxes now, and it grows tax deferred while it's throughout its life. But then in the future, you'll get to pay taxes when you withdraw. So those are things like 401ks, 457s, 403bs, thrift savings plans, SEPs, and traditional IRAs, et cetera, et cetera. Those are tax deferred. But the bulk of the American population prefer this type of account because it looks attractive. You get to reduce your taxes today, and it grows tax free. And I'll deal with the taxes later because I should be in a lower tax bracket. That's what they'll always tell you. When you retire, you'll be in a lower tax bracket. So kind of keep that in mind. Now, the government's still spending money on wars, and you still have higher unemployment. But then remember, in 2013, the first time in almost 70 plus years, the taxes started going back up. And also, the GDP ratio today is above 100% again for the first time in 70 plus years. And then this is what really you have to understand the math. Compared to 1940s, 2030s, and 40s, we had billions of dollars of debt. Now we have trillions. We have nearly $20 trillion worth of debt, whereas back then we only had 200 billion. That's like light years of difference right there. That's a real math problem. So what does this mean? It's a recipe for additional tax increases, period. I don't care how you look at this. If you don't understand the historical context of this country's financial past and current, you're not going to even be ready for the future. And this is why you have to apply a deeper level of math to your investment strategies today, because it will have grave consequences in the future. And it's all because these things are starting to line up to form this perfect recipe for a tax increase, which will devastate any of the retirement account, particularly if you're having the wrong type of account. So remember, I keep telling you, the biggest wealth transfer in history is about to happen. Most economists agree that in 2023, the U.S. debt will be so high, so we're talking about 26 to 30 trillion dollars or more. It's going to be so high that the current tax rate won't even support the government paying the interest anymore. It will be in default on paying the debts, interest on the debt. So that means if you're going to default on interest, that means other programs are going to default too. Social Security, Medicaid, Medicare. So now again, you can see why the politicians play everybody like a tennis ball with your heart. They play back and forth on the four programs that mean the most to you. But no one is truly going to the heart of the matter and showing you what the math is and what's going on, that something has to happen. Because if mathematically, we're going to run out of runway real soon. Now, so this one is one of the questions. What does tax deferred really mean? I mean, think about it. Tax deferred, I already told you a definition, but it means you pay taxes later when you withdraw, right? It also means you pay taxes later when your account is the largest. It also means you don't have a choice of the matter. Because if you're in a tax deferred account, that means you have to wait until you're 59 and a half years of age before you can start withdrawing without penalty, unless it's some hardship, right? And then they also have another stipulation. You have to start withdrawing a minimum RMD, what they call required minimum distribution, when you're 70 and a half. And why is that? Why would the government say you have to start taking money out at 70 and a half years old? Because you're living longer. So if you did really good in saving in a tax deferred account, and you say, man, I'm living healthy, I'm a vegetarian, man, I'm living good, I don't hardly go to the doctor except for my annual checkup. So I'm not going to touch it at 65. I'm waiting till I'm 75 because I still got to age 90 or beyond to live. So I'm going to start at age 75 and that'll last for the rest of my life. Guess what? The government said, no. You have to do it at 70 and a half because I need to start collecting some taxes from you. So required minimum distribution is going to use this weird calculator and say this married couple and at these ages have $2 million in their retirement account. And now we have to go out here and say, you know what? I need to figure out how I'm gonna make this last. Well, the government said, no, you're gonna pay some taxes first, buddy. That's what you're gonna do, and then we can talk about how you're gonna make it last. But I need to collect taxes now, so I'm not gonna let you just keep growing this thing infinitely and without thinking about how we're gonna get paid too. So that's what it comes down to. And it also means you're a business partner with the government. You're saying I'm going to give up, my choice and not pay my taxes today, but I know historically it's the lowest in about 70 plus years at 39%, 0.6%. And I'm going to take a chance sometime in the future and pay my taxes and not know what that rate is going to be because they can change it just like that. So if the debt that comes to saying will probably default in 2023 or a little bit sooner, and our ratio to GDP is above 100%, we still got a bunch of wars, low jobs, we still got people living longer. You know what happened back in 44? It was the highest tax rate in history. So what do you think? The somewhere between here, 39% to 94%, there's a lot of room that the government can go up with taxes that's going to help them get some of that revenue back in. So that's what this last slide line means. There's a magic four-letter word. I've been saying it, why taxes must go up. And it's not because of kids, it's not because of wars, not because life happens. It's because of math. No one is accounting for the math. And you guys gotta understand, mathematically, if you don't account for this issue, it's going to hurt you numerically when you need it the most, when you withdraw. And that's what folks gotta start understanding. So let's see. Let's go to the next one here. Here's some additional pieces of the math. Why I say it's critical. Remember, when you're 65 and older, most people, you lose your major tax deductions, which are what? You have a mortgage that's gone because your house is typically paid off, unless you're still taking out second and third and fourth mortgages. Your kids are grown, so you're not getting the kids deduction anymore. And employment, you don't have that anymore because you're retired, so you don't get to deduct any of those things anymore. And because of that, all your major deductions are gone. So whatever income you got coming in, you only have the standard deductions to rely on, which is, on a married couple right now, is $12,700 for a couple. And then you have also your two personal exemptions, one for the wife, one for the husband, of $4,050 each. So about $21,000 is your standard deduction for your household income. So anything above that, you're going to start paying taxes on. So just, again, do the math. If you got a retirement account bringing you $48,000, $60,000 a year, but you get to only deduct 21,000, you got a tax bill. So who said you're going to be in a lower tax bracket just because you retire in the future? That planner ought to be beat side the head because they're BSing you. They don't understand the math. You see what I'm getting at? They truly don't understand the real math. They give you that surface stuff, and we think that's the answer. So anyway, I'm not going to beat that horse. So keep going. You got to understand what I was talking about before. There are three major types of money categories your money fall into, and that is taxable. That means you pay the taxes now, or at the end of a fiscal calendar year. And those are things like CDs, savings, checking savings, mutual funds, etc. And then you got the all famous tax-deferred stuff, which is like the 401k, thrift saving plans, traditional IRA, SEPs, and 403bs. And they say, hey, I'll pay taxes later, but I reduce my taxable bill now. And then you have the tax advantage, which is like your Roth, cash value, life insurance, nonprofits, things of that nature, where you get to pay taxes up front and contribute money to these plans, and then don't pay taxes in the future when you collect. So that's the difference in the tax advantage. You have to have those two features, meaning I have tax-free withdrawals, so you don't care what's going on in the economy. Your money doesn't count taxable-wise. You get to take it out free. And it also doesn't count as provisional income to you. Again, meaning at the end of the year, if you took out $60,000 from a tax advantage account, say a Roth account, that $60,000 doesn't count towards your bottom line income. You don't pay tax on that $60,000. So if you got money coming in from Social Security over here of $30,000 a year and $60,000 coming from your Roth, you got $30,000 that potentially that could be a factor, but you got to deduct your what? Half of that is deductible based on your standard deduction. So you actually don't have this tax bill anymore because you're not making enough money for the government concern. That's the difference. And that's what a tax advantage account does for you. But anyway, I'm not going to go too deep into that right now. We'll kind of get into an example. But just keep in mind, when you draw in Social Security in the future, if it's still there, anything above $32,000 of income, the government taxes your Social Security by half of your Social Security, 50%. So if you got a 401k or a pension and you make it over $32,000 a year, half of your Social Security is taxed. That means they cut your Social Security in half because you're making over $32,000 in your retirement account, from your retirement account. And then anything above $44,000 a year, they tax your Social Security 85% of it. So again, if you make it $48,000 a year from your 401k, you're over by $4,000. So 85% of your Social Security gets cut. So this is where you got to take the survey and do some real research. Talk to someone that's 65 and older who's drawing Social Security and working the gig, part-time or full-time, or has a good pension paying them, and ask them what they have to do to balance their budget. They'll tell you. They're trying to get rid of stuff out of their names and reduce this income, slow it down, because they're getting killed on the Social Security and everything else. And that's the problem. And then the next thing, like I said, you still got the interest on the debt. That's going to probably default between now and 2023. Again, that's math. Eventually, you're going to have too much debt that the government just can't pay the interest on it. So you got the large debt, you got the wars. Again, the largest tax break in history happened because of the similar situation back in 44. And we're pretty much on the edge of that right now in 2017. So again, this is why you have to understand how math will directly affect your money when you retire. Because you got to understand who's going to pay your medical bills. You only have two choices. You're going to pay it yourself, meaning you're going to have enough money that you can afford to pay all your medical costs from start to finish. So you're self-paying, or you're going to have to rely on the government Medicaid, Medicare program where you pay for, or if you broke Medicaid, you don't pay for. You know what I mean? Those are your only two choices. You pay for yourself out of pocket 100% or most of it, or you rely on the system. Because guess what the government is going to do? They're going to use math. They're going to tell you, before we pay your medical bill completely, we're going to look at you from a math perspective, not for the, your life and your health. They don't care about that. Mathematically, they're going to say, oh, you retired from a very good job. You have a pension plan that's paying you $60,000, $75,000 a year of income. Oh, and by the way, you can afford to pay more of your medical costs. And you can afford an increase in your taxes. And by the way, you have 5 rental properties in your name. So you got that. And by the way, you got $300,000 in your bank account or mutual fund. So that's taxable too. You got that. So you don't need any government help. That's what they're going to say. And they're going to say it based on math. There's no emotion involved in that. Talk to someone that's older that's going through this struggle, and they'll tell you. And they feel like somebody slapped them in the face. But the reality, that's how they look at it from accounting perspective at the government level. They're simply using the math. And the worst thing is when I've talked to several clients, and this is what they're asking me. Hey, Manny, what's the problem? The grandma's in the hospital, had a stroke or a heart attack, and she needs to have this, follow-on surgery. They saved her life in the ER, but now she's in the recovery, and they got to do this major surgery to, replace an artery valve or something, or install this pacemaker and this and that, and a mesh. And guess what? They need, $150,000, $250,000. How, what can we do? That's what you mean. Well, she has a couple of rental properties in her name, and she has a house in her name, and she has three cars still, and her bank account got a couple $100,000, but they're telling her she got too much money. So we need to talk to someone. Who can we talk to get this stuff transferred quickly out of her name? And I hear this story over and over. It's too late to start to do that one in the emergency, emergency room on the table. It really comes down to, it takes someone to almost die before they understand what I'm trying to teach them while they're alive and have sense. You have to be in the ER, just recovered, before you realize what I'm telling you today is not a one-time occurrence. This happens every day. Someone is getting a rude wake-up call when they realize that math is what's keeping them from dying or living. Nothing to do with emotion. And you wonder why the politicians look at healthcare the way they do and say, you don't need it. Because they're looking at you as a number, not what's best for you health-wise. So again, if you're not super wealthy and can afford to pay for all your stuff out of pocket, you have to leverage the system that you're going to fall under when you turn 65. And that is Social Security, Medicaid, Medicare, and all those things that come with it. So you don't have to make your money stretch in order to live, for the next 25, 30 years beyond that, or you have to find some way to leverage that. So write these numbers down, and then let's kind of do a quick little case study and show you what I'm talking about math. So you got a married couple, both in the 50s. They bring in about $100,000 a year from their job, so $50,000 each. They got like $1 million in the IRA, so $500,000 in hers, $500,000 in his. They got $200,000 mutual fund account. They got 401ks that they're contributing to, but non-matching. They're paying 10% of that, and they're paying about $1,200 a year, in term life insurance for each one of them. Total $600 for each one of them a year for term life insurance, and then they also pay $6,000 a year for a joint long-term care plan. So that if one of them get hurt or injured and can't work, they're getting some money coming in to kind of help supplement their loss of pay. So when you start adding those numbers up mathematically, you'll see if this couple continues on this journey, and let's start with the IRA. If you keep growing that IRA to the point that it's $1-2 million later, years in the future is $2 million, That looks good on paper, but mathematically, what's going to happen is when you start taking money out, you don't know what tax bracket you're going to be in. And you have to pay taxes every time you take money out. So if you want $5,000 a month to spend or 60 for the year, guess what? Because of your tax rate in the future, you don't know if it's going to be 30%, 40%, or 60%. You may have to take out $10,000 just to get $5,000 worth of spendable money, because at the end of the year, you have to pay the bill at that tax rate. That's what a tax deferred account does. You're saying, I'm giving up my right to pay taxes up front, and I'm going to pay taxes later. I just don't know what range I'm going to be in. That's a gamble, guys. You gotta really understand you are taking a big chance. So the next thing is you got to look at let's look at the other account, the mutual fund. You got $200,000 in the mutual fund. That's being taxed every year because you get the 1099 saying every year this is how much you have to pay, for your money growing. So that's being taxed. So you don't need to have this big mutual fund and paying taxes every year just because you let it sit there. You really need to think about it as a emergency fund. I only need about 6 months worth of living in there. So my monthly expenses for 6 months. So that probably need to be right around $50,000 at the most. So you have a very minimum tax consequence. You don't need to have that thing growing out of control, $200,000, $300,000, $400,000, because all you're doing is paying taxes on it. And same thing with your 401k. It's just like your IRA. If you put in the max in your 401k and it turns to 1 million, 2 million in the future, again, the RMD, the required minimum distribution on that money alone is going to put you in a higher tax bracket, because on $1 million, you're probably going to be collecting $70,000 a year or more in income, required minimum distribution based on the formula. So that means you have to take at least $70,000 a year. That means you want to pay taxes on it. So you automatically, remember, Social Security, anything above 32 or 44,000, they just start taxing Social Security. And anything above those numbers, they also start jeopardizing your Medicaid, Medicare, because they're gonna say you got too much income coming in. So you couldn't even go into the lowest tax bracket just because your RMD, required minimum distribution, is going to be too high because the type of account you use, tax deferred account. So you gotta understand that TSP, you don't need to get that super fat. It does you no good in the future. It's going to hurt you in so many different ways. And then this is the part. I'm not going to go through each one of these things, but this is the part. Remember, when you're a married couple, you're community married, right? Community laws. So if one spouse dies and all that income now goes over to the next spouse, that new spouse is left with this influx of money that throws them into another tax bracket, because they now are worth more on paper, so they can't qualify for these programs. They have to spend it down. Again, talk to someone that's over 65 and ask them what they do when they got sick or major sickness or illness or injury. The government tells you have to do a spend down. You can't have more than 115,000 or so in your bank account. You can't have but one car if the other spouse is dead. You can't have but one house that you live in. If you got a bunch of rental properties, you have to liquidate and sell those and pay for your surgery or your recovery or your rehab or your long-term care. You don't have to spend all this money down to these low limits before they will pick up the bill. And this is what people don't understand. They don't get it until, remember, you're on the emergency table trying to survive. And you got to hurry, quick deed claim properties in kid's name and all this different stuff and try to move things around so you can pay for that major surgery and that major recovery. Because that's what the government is going to do. They're going to apply math. They said, sorry, Charlie, you're worth too much money or you have too many assets. You spend down first. And once you get below that number, then you apply and we'll help you pick up the tab. So you just wasted all those years, 40 years or more, putting this money away in these tax deferred and taxable accounts just for it to be taken away from one major illness, one sickness. To me, that makes zero sense. So that's why you have to understand the math. And in the same token, a long-term care plan, you're paying, do you know how those things really work? Those are use it or lose it type plans. Meaning, if you get a long-term care plan and you're paying $100 a month or 1,000 a month, it doesn't matter. If you don't get injured or sick enough to have to use it, and all of a sudden that plan expires because the time is up, it's a 20-year plan, guess what? They don't give you a refund. Those thousands of dollars are gone. And on top of that, when you reapply for coverage again for another 20 years, guess what? The plan costs 12, 15, 20 times what it was when you were 25 years old. Because now you're 55 years old, 60 years old. They know they will have to pay you for your injury or your sickness that's going to happen. So guess what they do? They charge you based on your age and current health. That's what the plan costs, thousands of dollars for a person that's older compared to someone that's young. So I'm gonna wrap it up because I'm gonna be up for everybody in 4 minutes. But this is what I try to do. I try to create this case study for you individually and help you understand how to put the math to your specific situation. Because it's just a general kind of, it covers any and everybody, meaning something that applies to everybody. But you got to understand all your numbers and understand how it's going to affect you by having your money in a taxable account where you pay taxes every year regardless as you grow it, a tax-deferred account where you don't pay taxes up front, but you pay it later, and a tax-advantage account where you pay taxes up front going in, but you don't pay taxes when you go out, and it doesn't count against your provisional income. There's a distinct difference on what happens to your individual when they have money in those three different accounts. So in this particular case study, if this family had more of their money in a tax advantage account, that means they already paid taxes 20, 30 years ago. So they can have $2-3 million in a Roth, in a cash value life insurance policy, in a nonprofit. And guess what happens? It doesn't affect them negatively at all. They don't have to worry about not qualifying for any program. They will qualify because that's non-provisional income. It does not count against their income. They don't pay taxes when they take the money out. So if you have a heart attack and you qualify for Medicaid now, let them pay the bill. But guess what? You now have cash coming from your tax advantage account that can pay for that nurse to come in 7 days a week in your home instead of going to some crappy nursing home. And that you're just tossing like a bunch of sardines, and you die because of the stress and the poor environment or the ill treatment. Again, talk to someone that's older, and they'll tell you really what's going on. They'll tell you, you'll see why these old folks are eating dog food and not using the heat and AC when it should be, and trying to squeeze every dollar because it's not cracked up what they were, thought it was going to be, because the math just doesn't add up now, because they had their money is all in the wrong type of accounts, or the most of it taxable and tax-deferred accounts. All I'm saying is there's a magical number that you need to have in each one of those type of accounts so that you either reduce your taxable income completely or get it back down to where it doesn't hit you any taxes in the future. And there's a number. That's the deep math you have to apply, not that surface stuff in the prospectus. They're not going to show you this at a regular investment advisor. They're not going to show you this. So I'm a financial educator. So that's what I do. I'm teaching you from an educational perspective how these things work. You have to make a decision and apply the action. So there's my information right there. Manny Gathers, that's my cell, that's my emails, website. And we're constantly expanding this thing that we're teaching our clients. And obviously we have plans and we have license to help you get into these different things, accounts if you have to. But more importantly, we have, we can take the time to teach you one-on-one, or we can take the time to teach you as a group. So we can just give me a call, email, text, and say, look, can you teach this thing in a more detailed perspective to my fraternity, sorority, I'm a business owner, I got 100 employees. Can you come in? Sure, I'll come in at no cost. teach this to your clients, help them with their solution to their specific problem, and they can change this outcome because you already know mathematically what's going to happen. You just need to go ahead and take action. And if you need one-on-ones, we can do that, schedule it. But, if you want to do the group thing and, be able to reach a lot of people, you got an attentive audience, let me know. We can schedule that as well. I can do it online, or if it's local, I can come do it in person. Either way, so that's what we do at Best Money Strategies. So thank you for tuning in, and again, hope to talk to you guys in the future. And hopefully you learned something by looking at the whole picture and applying a little more deeper math. All righty. Thank you so much. Have a good one.